So yeah, we're here today with Louise Cook for enhancing your performance with kinesiology. So do you want to get going?
Thank you, Frances. Okay, so yes, today it's about improving performance, and this slide. I just love this slide because it just shows two things. One, how separate the two halves of the brain are. And secondly, the importance of this band of fibers that run between the two halves of the brain. And it's called the corpus callosum. And under stress, the two sides of the brain can shut down by up to 80%. So minor stress can cause, moderate problems, and severe stress causes huge problems with people, as you might know, even forgetting their names, where they live, sort of difficulty coordination. We know ourselves when we've, we're running out of time, that things just start, we just start tripping over and we can't remember things and so on and so forth. So this sequence of exercises that I'm going to talk to you about today are how important it is to improve communication across the corpus callosum. And there's a technique that we use in kinesiology and in educational kinesiology, this sequence of exercises that I'm going to teach you today. Okay, next slide. Oh, so my slides are slightly in the wrong order as well. This is Dr. Batman-Jalic, and I
Okay, just double checking I got it right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you have. So he is important to me because he's the man that made me realize about the importance of water. And the first stage of these exercises is to drink water. And his story is very interesting because he was imprisoned and due to be executed in an Iranian prison during the Civil War. And he had no medicine, so all he could use was water and salt. And his prescription to every single person, regardless of their diagnosis, was 8 glasses of water. And he used salt for cleaning wounds, and for people with asthma and breathing difficulties, he found that salt broke up the mucus plugs. So he stayed in this prison for 2 years, and he wrote it all down. And he found that people with, and I used to have this list off by heart: arthritis, asthma, diabetes, depression, headaches, migraines, digestive problems, back problems, and I'm sure there's another one. All have, chronic dehydration problems, and this is probably about 90% of a doctor's surgery. Sort of like with problems of chronic dehydration. So when I read his book, Your Body's Many Cries for Water, I decided that me and my husband, we needed to start drinking water more seriously and making sure that it was part of our daily regime. So we now have a pint of tepid water, because tepid water is absorbed really easily, and we have a pint of tepid water at night, so morning and night, just to sort of ensure that we're hydrated. And your brain is particularly important in this because your brain is 80% fluid, and it's the conductor of neural messaging, so it needs water for that neural electricity. Okay, next one.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So just so just some facts about water. And I like the bit about eating, sort of like 100% of dieters, 100% found that they, because you confuse, your body can't tell the difference between dehydration and hunger. So it'll, if you drink water, you can stop your hunger pangs. It's quite often the number one trigger of daytime fatigue. It can trigger short-term memory loss, basic maths problems, difficulty focusing on a computer. So, and I don't know, this was a Norwegian study, number 6, 5 glasses of water daily decreases the risk of most cancers by 50%. I wrote this quite some time ago. I probably wouldn't have that up there now. But certainly they did find that at that time. Okay, next slide. So, yeah, my bête noire, aspartame. So for me, I know I'm repeating to the converted of the people who are listening here now, but aspartame is really interesting how it affects the brain. What I'm particularly interested in, it breaks down into methyl alcohol. That's your toxic alcohol, very poisonous. And it also breaks down into 2 neurostimulatory chemicals, and these attach to a brain receptor. So you've got your brain receptor and your aspartame molecule, the broken down variety, goes into this brain receptor, and it attaches to this brain receptor. It can't let it go. And so it continues to stimulate this brain receptor until that actual brain receptor dies. And so it actually, sort of is causing, I mean, you have millions of these brain receptors, so it's not like your brain is dying, that quickly. But I have seen people come, with serious conditions to see me, who are aspartame drinkers, with chronic knee problems, chronic fatigue problems, and sort of fibromyalgia type problems. And taking aspartame out of the diet is just, has a massive response. And interestingly, it causes obesity because the liver because the liver takes in something that's sweet. It assumes that it's sort of like calories, and so it stops manufacture from protein and starch reserves, and it stores the fuels that are circulating in the blood. It puts them into the fat deposits, waiting for the food to arrive, which it doesn't do. Okay. Oh, sorry. This is, yes. So the sister product of aspartame is MSG, and I've just put that in because it is the sister product of aspartame. But it's particularly affecting for hyperactive children. Aggravates Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, causes cancer, and DNA damage to animals. Okay, so that's next one. Right. Okay, so. So before I teach these exercises, what I like people to do is to make an assessment of how their body is working at this moment in time. And one of the things I'd like you to do is a little experiment to find out which ear you're hearing best from. I'm going to have to take these off now, just see if I can get it to work, so I can demonstrate how this works. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is put one hand behind your ear, put your other hand in front, and I want you to count, sort of 1, 2, 3. And then I want you to put the other hand in front, and count 1, 2, 3. And I just want you to make an assessment of which ear is louder. Okay, can you just try that for me now?
1, 2, 3.
And this is finding your dominant ear.
1, 2, 3. Well, I already know is my right ear is the good
one. And one ear will sound crisper. Did you notice that? Did you observe that? People listening, thumbs up.
Yeah, but I know I'm deaf a little bit in my left ear.
Oh, right, okay.
I noticed I was hearing better in my right ear.
Yeah, and it sounds crisper, sort of like. And the other assessment, possibly not so good in artificial light, but I'd like you just to look at a picture that's close to, sort of in your surroundings, or maybe something printed on the wall. If you can just have an assessment of how your eyesight is performing at this moment in time, and just kind of notice. I just want you to notice what it looks like now. I'm just looking at the wallpaper over at my friend's house, and just seeing how, because I normally wear glasses, just seeing what my vision is like at this moment in time. Okay, so of course, I forgot to tell everybody to go and get some water before we started this. Okay, can we go to the next slide? Okay, sorry, same, that needs deleting. Okay, the next one. Okay, so this is the pace ladder. So that it's we actually do it backwards. It's energetic, clear, active, and positive. So we start with the energetic. We get electrical energy into our body through drinking some fluid. So if you've got some water, I've got a drink here. So if you've got some water near at hand, you can drink some water. Has anybody got anything to drink?
No,
Right,
but
next slide.
I'm drinking.
2 flights of stairs. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Energetic water. Right. Do you want me to stay on this one? Oh.
Yeah, you can stay on this one and then go to the next. Yeah, click that up and then go to the next slide.
Okay.
Okay, so drinking water electrifies the body. It detoxes us. Anything that is, I mean, it's really interesting because anything that has got food in it has to be processed. Water gets absorbed in the small intestine. If there's any food in it, it goes, it has to be digested. And the stomach is actually designed, I don't know if you know this, the stomach is sort of slightly lopsided, and it's designed so that water, if you drink water on top of food, that the water slides over the top of the food and goes straight into the small intestine. So I know we're told not to drink water and eat food, but for those of you, I have a friend who drinks at least a pint of water with every meal, and I go,
wow.
Your digestive system. But I'm slightly reassured, having read this in the fantastic book Gut. By this,
interesting, yeah, because I've got this idea that I should not drink like half an hour before and an hour after eating.
Yes, that's Dr. Batman's. He started that, I think, when he wrote his book back in the 80s. Wow. But recently there's been a book out which was a huge bestseller called Gut by a German. She was a student doctor, Julia Enders, and it's full of fascinating bits of information about your gut, and that was one bit I pulled out from that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is activate the kidney 27s. So we're going to put our hand on the navel and we're going to rub the points under the collarbone. And in kinesiology, we take these points a lot when we're doing what we call switching, which is just stimulating the K27s. And interestingly, in educational kinesiology, we rub these points, but we rub them for slightly different reasons. We rub them to improve switching, and we rub them because they're a master communicator point, and they really work on the eyes. And so in brain gym, we're very interested in how eyes work and how eyes function, but they just really do clear eye performance. And so I just want you to swap your hands around if you're still rubbing. And there's a technique that I taught on the course, and I'll just repeat it here now, that if you stop rubbing for a minute and then you just track your eyes from side to side, and you might notice that your eyes jump. And then if you hold these 27 points and rub again, you can track your eyes slowly, and they will just be able to, you can do it slower, they're smoother, there's greater coordination. Holding these K27 points, you can't see K27 points, and tracking the eyes from side to side. So when I'm working with children, it's a really nice exercise to give them for improving tracking and improving reading skill and speed. Okay. Next one. Okay, so the next thing we're doing is we're going to cross crawl. You can either do this. Ooh, Linda's gone.
Just just as she might come back in a minute. Maybe she lost connection.
So we'll So you can cross crawl, and you can cross crawl sitting down, which
Can you? Okay, so you just literally, okay.
So you can yes, you can sit and cross and tap your toes, tap your knees. Sorry.
Is it important that you raise your knees up, or just
yeah,
tapping?
you raise your knees.
Yeah. Okay.
So that your hands are tapping the opposite side, and and you twist the body as well, so you get that sense, that kind of core activation. Okay, so 20 of these will just activate the communication between the two halves of the brain. And then we finish off.
No. Sorry, I've lost.
It's all right.
Did you lose the connection? It was just me.
Just you.
Oh,
good,
no.
glad you're back.
Okay, so I'm back.
Good. So we've just been cross-crawling. We've just been cross-crawling sitting down. So we've been...
Yeah. I'm listening.
Tapping, holding up, putting our hands on our opposite knee, just trying it sitting down, because I find once you've sat down in front of a screen, it's difficult to get up again. So we're just doing a few cross crawls while we're sitting down, but actually kind of moving as much as you possibly can, just to kind of activate that core and the sense of a cross patterning movement. Okay, so we've activated, and this really activates and switches on the corpus callosum. And when I'm working as an educational kinesiologist, I do something that's called Denison laterality repatterning, where it's almost like it blows a hole between the two sides of the brain, and it's just so powerful. And it just makes cross-crawling automatic response. Okay, so the next one. Oh yes, there we go. Improves working the midline of the body. And then this finally is the exercise is hookups, which I taught briefly on the course, where you cross your feet at the ankles, you put your thumbs down, you link you put your thumbs down. Don't know if you can see this. And then you cross your hands, link the fingers, and then you can either stay with the hands straight, or you can put them up into this position. And interestingly, you can do this quite discreetly if you keep your elbows straight, so that it is under the desk. And what this does, this is a really interesting exercise. It links the whole of the meridian pathways up in a figure 8 shape. And figure 8 unity sign is really powerful and impressive shape, and all meridians either end on the hands or the feet, and so we've just kind of connected up all the meridian ends. So I recommend that you sit with your tongue up to the roof of your mouth while you're in this position, because that just links up electrically to the limbic brain. It's the technique that many Oriental, what word am I looking for? Oriental therapies use, like Tai Chi, you breathe in, tongue up, you breathe out, tongue down. And for me, above the roof of the mouth is where the limbic system is, and it just makes that connection. So I just like everybody to sit in this position, roof to the top of the tongue to the top of the mouth, for just a few seconds, and just experience how this feels. One of the things I observe when I'm sitting in this position is that my breathing deepens, and that my shoulders kind of just drop. And it just feels like my whole body goes into a kind of relaxation. Okay. And then the second part of this exercise is to put the feet flat on the ground and fingertips together. Just to take a couple of deep breaths in. Okay. So that's the pace exercises. And I'd now like you just to repeat your little experiments that we did at the beginning. I'd like you to talk to your ears again and just observe, is there any difference in the quality of your listening?
Hello, hello. Hello, hello. 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 Oh.
Yeah, they felt more even to me.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Was it better?
Yeah. I found
Okay.
it was, yeah. That's good. I will have to do it more often.
Yes, it's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It just balances out the brain. So that's just the feedback that you get, is that you got when we first did it, you had your dominant ear, and you do have a dominant ear. Your dominant ear was hearing more crisply, more loudly, and then afterwards, after you've just done this sequence of exercises, you have this balancing effect. So you know that the left side of the brain, which is all your academic, it's the symbol recognizing brain, it's the pattern recognizing brain, as opposed to the right hand side of the brain, which is all your picture, sort of your intuitive, your spatial awareness. But we two to operate together, and so this is just a kind of proof. And then the next thing I'd like you to do is just look at your just whatever you looked at before, just look at it again and just observe, does it look any clearer? I think mine looks a bit bright. Sometimes it looks just a bit brighter. It's not there's just a bit more definition in the
I just feel like my eyes feel less tired. Like
I was in the dark, so it's not bad.
Yeah. And I feel like I can see clearer. Yeah. My eyes are less tired. It's just easy.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll have to do that one again.
So it's just interesting how, and if I was teaching this obviously to people in person, I would do other exercises where I would get people to stand up. And interestingly, when I demonstrate teaching what's called brain buttons in this exercise, but we know as rubbing K27s, when you put your hand on the navel, this switches on a whole part of the brain called the reticular activating system, which is your balance part of the brain. But the balance part of the brain is very good for processing, information. And so when I'm teaching this in person, I get someone, I push them, and they can't, with just four fingers, I just push them sort of quite slowly with four fingers, and they just fall over. And then I get them to put their hand on their navel, and I push them again, and they stay upright. And it's just that taking your awareness to these core postural muscles has kind of it switched them on, but it's also switched on the balance part of the brain. And balance part of the brain is, so important, especially for children with, for learning issues, etc. Okay, so
would this benefit a person with a hearing problem?
Yes, so cross crawling, if you're noticing a difference, then I think it will be.
I did notice. I was quite surprised, to be honest.
Yeah, I know. That's interesting, isn't it? So, so everything goes through the corpus callosum. Okay, so when you hear through this, through your ear, your brain goes through 9 synapses. There are 9 nerves till it gets to the other side. So if you're improving communication, and it goes through what's called olives as well, which are kind of like junction boxes. So if this has made that improvement, then I would be undertaking an experiment to do it.
Yeah.
To do it every day, and like check every day and see, if
Would you
it's
have to do it several times a day or once a
no,
day?
I think, well, I mean,
The more
well,
the better, I guess.
I would, I'd say at least once, but once would be good. And when the reason I've got pictures of children is because I taught these exercises so many times over and over and over again in schools. And I was particularly teaching them to children who were doing their exams, though it works for, I'll tell you an anecdote. But that we were having 10% improvement in exam results, sort of like across the board. And the interesting thing was, for me, and which was delightful in a way, was the least able children and the most able children of the kind of, distribution of children all improved, because it's working on the brain, so there's no discrimination in terms of brain power. All improve your brain, and it was just fantastic to see. And if children repeat this sequence of exercises, it just seems to just improves on so many levels, because if you can access the 2 halves of your brain, then you can track 2 eyes together, you can hear better with 2 ears, you can discriminate words better. So on so many levels it works. But for adults, these pace exercises are really interesting. If you need to get something done, do pace exercises. And I always remember that my favorite story about this was I was having to write a letter, and I hate writing letters. There's a psychological problem to do with my mother returning letters to me that kind of like just screws me up for writing letters. But anyway, I had to write a letter to my next door neighbor when I lived in the house I lived in before. He didn't speak English, but I wanted to write him the letter so that somebody would explain it to him. And it was about money, and it was about our falling down wall. And I thought, this is going to take me forever, and it's going to be awful. And I did pace exercises, and I sat down and I wrote this letter, and it was so concise, and it was really easy, and it wasn't convoluted at all. And, and it was just done. It took me 10 minutes to draft it, another 10 minutes to write it out, and it was over and done with. And I just went, okay, yeah, I get it. I know it works, but now I know it works, if you know what I mean. So it just, and I'm dyslexic, so which is why I'm doing this. Okay, so next. I can't remember. Oh, yes, there you go. Oh, and the next one. This is because so improves communication in all areas of the brain. It brings to the front of brain for higher level reasoning, and it has this dramatic relaxation effect. It's very good. Hookups is really good to do before any kind of public speaking, interviews.
And what about as a part of a like self-care tools for healing? Like I always recommend clients do this. Have you got anything to say about that, healing chronic illness, and how this can help?
So in terms of balancing the meridian energy, yes. So you're working on improving the electrical flow through all the meridians. And, so you've got a heart meridian, a stomach meridian, and it just kind of brings relaxation to all of those organs. And so from your perspective of working with people who are recovering from illness, this just, it does 2 things. It creates a relaxation, just improves the body on so many different levels, so many electrical levels, and it also creates that flow through the meridian system, creating calm. And
if you're relaxing the brain and nervous system, it's like another way of regulating your nervous system, which helps you to heal as well.
Yeah. I have a story about this. I don't know if I told it to you or somebody else, but I'll tell it again. I was working with some parents of children with autism, and one mother had a child who hated going to sleep, hated going to bed, and I taught her hookups, and I also taught her that if she sat in hookups, it improved the energy of the people around her. And I demonstrated this with kinesiology, with some muscle testing, by getting the person to sit beside her thinking negative thoughts, and then I put her beside the person thinking negative thoughts, and the person thinking the negative thoughts said, I can't do it anymore. I can't remember what I told her to think about. It wasn't anything desperately sad. It was probably that, she'd trodden in dog muck or something. It was something of that order. She said, I can't think about it anymore. I just can't concentrate on it. It's just gone. And so we're armed with this knowledge, this parent with this nonverbal autistic daughter who hated going to bed. When she put her daughter to bed, she sat on the bed in hookups and just waited, sort of like until she went to sleep. So for the first few nights, 20 minutes went past, and then she finally settled down. And then she rang me to say, this is amazing. She said, I go into bed, I go and take my daughter to bed. She settles down immediately. I go into hookup, I take her into hookups, and she said, it's just been amazing. So we've completely changed this nightmare routine into something that is absolutely fabulous. And, sort of she's calm and relaxed. I stay in hookups, and she just kind of changes her energy really easily and goes to sleep really easily. So it's so interesting that, sort of as proof that, that your energy, it's coherence, isn't it? The knowledge that we have coherence with people, that if we know if someone's in a bad place, that their energy affects us. So the opposite always happens as well, that we can, that if our energy is coherent, it can create coherence in someone else, and hookups gives you coherence. Interesting. Okay, what have we got next?
End of the slideshow. There we go. Okay.
Yeah, so fantastic.
So thanks, Louise. Yeah, is there anything
you.
else you want to talk about, or do you want to bring it to a close? Or
Pardon?
Is there anything else you want to share today? Or?
Oh, well, just if people are listening to this afterwards, I just like, them to go away and have a play with those exercises. They're quite simple. They don't take that long. Drink water, rub these points. They can either approach you or me for a handout, sort of like, you've got one, and trial them for themselves, see how it works. They are fantastic. They are this brilliant sequence of exercises.
Thank you, Louise. Do you practice them every day yourself, would you say, or just?
Yeah, I do it in the shower.
Oh, lovely.
It's a bit sleepy when you're doing hookups, but
yeah.
How long do you sort of, again, 15 or 20 seconds again to hold them?
For which? For
hookups or
for hookups, a bit longer, sort of half a minute to a minute, sort of like we did it only for 15-20 seconds, but you can see I hope you felt the difference, that you noticed the difference. But you don't have to hold them for a great length of time, but the longer you hold them, the greater the energetic effect is,
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Louise. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Those that listen to the recording, I hope you practice these amazing exercises too. I'm just going to stop the recording now.